What is going on, everyone? A huge thank you for clicking on the video. I greatly appreciate that as always. Today I wanted to make a little video showing off playing Pokemon ROM hacks on the GameCube's Gameboy Player here. I've seen a few people online as well as in some of the comments on my videos wondering if that was possible, if you could do that. And assuming the internet's not lying to us, yes, it should be possible to play these on the Game Boy Player. The Game Boy Player is essentially just a Game Boy Advance, It can play Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and of course, Game Boy Advance games. It's even got itself a little trade port right there if you ever want to link up on those games. I believe the only thing that you can't play on here are those little video cards. I can't really remember the name of them, but you could watch like SpongeBob or Dragon Ball GT. It had a lot of different options on there, but I believe those are the only thing that can't be played on the Game Boy Player, so theoretically, these games should work no problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. What are we going to need? Well, we're obviously going to need a GameCube, Game Boy Player, and a controller probably wouldn't hurt to have one of those as well. As far as the color goes, I think anything will work. The GameCube, Game Boy Player controller, they all come in a variety of colors. That shouldn't matter in the long run. Next up, we're going to need our game of choice, or games of choice. You're probably going to want to play more than one game on this. We've got a nice curated stack of ROM hacks here we're going to be checking out. Tried to get one of all the different generations. But perhaps the most expensive piece of the puzzle here is, of course, the Game Boy GameCube Player Startup or Boot Up disc. This, unfortunately, might cost you an arm and a leg, or maybe your firstborn child. It's very expensive. It's the sole reason why I have not had a Game Boy Player for my entire life. It's just so expensive. It's absurd. And every single one you look at just looks scratched to oblivion. They might say they work, but I question it a little bit. So that is probably the most important and most expensive piece of the puzzle. But I also wanted to take this time to show you a little bit of a workaround that I came across. Now, some of you may know what this is, but for those who don't, I actually came across this neat little Game Boy Player memory card here on eBay for about 20-30 bucks, give or take. And essentially what this guy does is, once you plug it into your GameCube slot here, for a lack of better words, it sort of tricks the GameCube or Game Boy Player into thinking whatever game you have in here is that boot up startup disc. Now, you can't use every GameCube disc. There is a select few that you can use. I'm going to be using Wind Waker today. It is a small list, but I'll go ahead and throw that up on the screen there for you to check out. There's a good chance you probably have, one or two of these, I know Wind Waker is also a bit expensive, but surely there's something on this list that you either have or is relatively cheap. I'm going to assume most all of these are probably going to be cheaper than the actual startup disc itself, so just a huge shout out to whoever it was that made this Game Boy Player memory card. It is a absolute lifesaver. It's opened the door for me and I'm sure many other people to actually play the GameCube Game Boy Player. But that is not the purpose of this video. As awesome as that is, there's something else that we're here to do today, and that is, of course, play these ROM hacks on the Game Boy Player. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start playing some ROM hacks. Now, first up, we've got technically not a ROM hack. We actually have a Pokemon Green copy here I wanted to try out. I've had it for a long time now, and it's pretty visually glitchy. I wanted to see if that would maybe hinder our experience with the Game Boy Player in any way. I don't think it's going to, but I figured may as well try it out. Now, as for starting up this Game Boy Player with the memory card, it's pretty straightforward all the way through. It's going to vary a little bit from game to game. I, of course, have Wind Waker here, and all you got to do is start the GameCube up like normal, and it's going to look like you're playing Wind Waker. Don't get too confused, but this is just how it works. So it's all pretty straightforward. You're going to pull up Wind Waker here, and once we actually start pulling up the profile or the game, you'll hit start. It's going to freeze for just a split second there, but then, bam! Pokemon Green. It is actually working with this memory card. This is truly amazing that this memory card exists. So huge shout out to everybody who made this thing. It is just a fantastic workaround. But yes, we have Green here in all of its glitchy glory. I've talked about this a few times in a few different videos on the channel. I don't know if I've ever actually shown it before, so I guess may as well check it out now. I'll show you what I mean by glitchy. It's just a little visually odd, like when you look at Pokemon stats, it's a little funky, and when you get into a battle, your HP bar or XP bar, it kind of goes a little haywire, I guess you could say. And as for this testing out this Game Boy Player, I'm going to kind of walk around, maybe jump into a battle, kind of give you a good taste of everything to show you that this Game Boy Player does work. But yeah, let's go ahead and we'll jump into a battle here. I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. It's just, it looks a little weird. It works. You know, I think I've played and beaten Green, this copy of Green, 2, maybe 3 times, so it works. It's just a little odd. It doesn't bother me too much. Obviously, there are better Green quality games out there, but for what it was, $10, it doesn't bother me. But yeah, you'll kind of see that the HP bar, I think it is. Oh, it's a bit bonkers. But this is not entirely why we're here. This is technically not a real ROM hack, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one in line. We're going to take a look at one from each generation of the Game Boy. So first up, we're going to be taking a look at Kanto Expansion Pack. Yes, the Kanto Expansion Pack, or Pokemon Keep, as I like to call it sometimes. I guess this goes without saying, all of these ROM hacks I'm taking a look at, they're phenomenal. If you haven't played any of them, please check them out. I want everybody to check out these games. I wouldn't be talking about them again if I didn't think they were awesome. And Pokemon Keep is no exception. It is just a fantastic Gen 1 game through and through. And just like Pokemon Green, we're going to start up the GameCube, start up Wind Waker. It's all pretty straightforward. It's very easy to figure out. And would you look at that, our first actual ROM hack is in fact working on the Game Boy Player, which is of course the best possible outcome we could have asked for. Now as for Pokemon Keep, it is quite literally what it says it is. It's a Kanto expansion pack. So you've got all of these newer Kanto ideas shoved into a Gen 1 game, and it's awesome. You've got beta Pokemon that never made it in. You've got pre-evolutions, extended evolutions, all that good stuff. I think even those paradox forms are in here. And just a ton of quality of life improvements to the game. And just like Green, I'm going to also, walk around, hop into a battle, kind of just show you that this game does actually work on the Game Boy Player. Yeah, jumping into the battle here, as you can see, I'm a female trainer. That's another new addition. And I've got the Cactormus Pokemon. Awesome Pokemon. I love all of the additions to the Kanto expansion pack. It's awesome. But moreover, this is working. The battle is working. We're walking around. Everything about this is working. I'm pretty sure we're going to have an easy time with the rest of the games. And speaking of, we'll go ahead and move on to the Gen 2 games, the Game Boy Color games, which are my favorite era of games. And what better one to look at than, of course, Pokemon Prism version. If you haven't played it, you've almost certainly heard of it, and if you haven't played it, you should totally play it. This is one of the best Gen 2 hacks out there, and it's probably one of the oldest ones out there. It's definitely one of the first ones I ever played. I remember playing it back on like coolroms.com or whatever. Didn't get very far, but I remember playing it, and it was way back in its infancy back there. And also, I probably should have mentioned this at the top of the video, but these are the same cartridges I used in my videos about these actual games. So they're just kind of your standard, more generic end flash carts. They're going to vary from price and quality of board, from game to game. So it's nothing too crazy. It's nothing like an EverDrive, though. I imagine if these things are working on the Game Boy Player, the EverDrive should have no problem whatsoever working. I just like to have a physical representation. I definitely recommend if you want to play these games, play them on an emulator or get an EverDrive. They're the more quality, better experience. It's more reliable that way. So this is an older version, I imagine, of Prism. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it's fully done, but this game that I'm playing, it is technically fully complete. You can play it all the way through. I'm pretty sure that they've had more versions since I made that video and since this cartridge was made, but either way, it is working on the Game Boy Player, which is phenomenal, and I just gotta say, I absolutely love how colorful this game is. It makes me think like if Nintendo and Pokemon never moved on to the Game Boy Advance, this is what I imagine it would have continued to be like on the Game Boy Color. Like these new additions that they add, all of the quality of life and just the overall colors and everything that they add to the game, it feels like the actual natural step Pokemon would have taken if it stayed on the Game Boy Color. But we do have one more to look at, and it's for the Game Boy Advance. We're going to be moving on to the final one today, and I imagine if any of them were to work, it would probably be the Game Boy Advance, but thankfully they've all been working so far. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the Gen 3 games, and we're going to be taking a look at Dragon Ball Z Team Training. Yes, I did say Dragon Ball Z Team Training. I didn't even say the word Pokemon. I'm not mistaken. This is just what it is. Essentially what Dragon Ball Z Team Training is it is a Dragon Ball painted fire red. And I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It is fire red through and through, but basically it's replaced all of the Pokemon and even a lot of the trainers and gym leaders that you fight with Dragon Ball Z characters, which is awesome. So you can literally craft like your own Z fighter team. And I definitely geared more towards the villains. I like those. I'm pretty sure I also have Tin Shinhan as well. He's just like the coolest character. But if Dragon Ball Z isn't your cup of tea, there's tons of other ones out there like that. They're all very similar. They're either Fire Red and Leaf Green or Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, but just like painted as like a different anime typically. Like there's Yu-Gi-Oh, which I think was also Fire Red. I did a video on that as well. I think that one maybe makes the most sense. Like Yu-Gi-Oh to Pokemon, it kind of translates just a little bit better. But there's tons out there. There's Digimon, which also probably makes a lot of sense. I've seen Naruto, all sorts. I think there's even Pokemon, or sorry, not Pokemon, Mario as well. There's bound to be something more up your alley if it's not Dragon Ball Z. But yeah, just take a look at this thing. Not only working on the Game Boy Player, which is, you know, what we wanted out of this video, but just look at all these, look at this roster here. Look, this is just awesome. I mean, it's simple at the end of the day, but clearly a lot of work was put into this ROM hack. I absolutely love it. You got the different backgrounds, you got all the different Z fighters. I mean, you got people from OG Dragon Ball all the way up to Super. I mean, they've literally got it all in here, and this is awesome. So ultimately, yes, you can play ROM hacks on the GameCube's Game Boy Player. I didn't want to like phrase this video as can you play, as I was pretty confident that you could. Everything I saw online made it seem like yes, you could. So really, I just wanted this video to kind of serve as video evidence in case you do have that question. You can see this video. Yes, you can actually play ROM hacks on the Game Boy Player. So if this is something that interests you, let me know down below. What's the first ROM hack you're going to be playing on the big screen? Alright, that is going to bring us to the end of the video here, the end of Can You Play Pokemon ROM Hacks on the GameCube Game Boy Player. Yeah, you can. And now we've got video evidence that you can, so if you had that question, hopefully it has now been answered for you. You can in fact play these on the GameCube Game Boy Player. I would again like to shout out the awesome memory card here, the little workaround, I guess you could say, for the Game Boy Player so that you don't actually need that startup disc anymore. Obviously, that's not the literal purpose of this video, but I thought it might be cool to show that off to people who don't know about it. It's just a nice, cheap alternative to that soul-selling Game Boy Player disc. You don't have to do that anymore, guys. You don't have to do that. So, huge shout out to that. And of course, huge shout out to all of the people who make the ROM hacks. You know, you guys do tremendous work. I probably sound like a broken record, I know. But you guys make some awesome fan-made experiences, and I'm just so happy that I can play those. So huge shout out to everybody who made the actual ROMs themselves. You guys are doing God's work. It's fantastic. But that's going to bring us to the end of the video here. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all got something out of this. If you did, feel free to leave a like on the video. That would help me out in the channel a ton. And if there's anything you want to see from me in the future, leave those in the comments down below. And I'm always looking for, new ideas and new avenues to explore, so leave all that down below. But until next time, I'll see you all later.